It's with deep regret, Mr. Chairman, that I note the budget that was presented last week was characterized by a rather modest, if not mediocre, set of announcements, distinctive misses, deafening silences on matters of substance, and the utterly evident insincerity of this government to truly offer a way forward to the people of our country from the series of crises that they have been afflicted with since the first innings of this government. Since cricket is on our minds these days with the World Cup semi-final tomorrow, let me say that instead of the bold boundaries we expected in this first budget after the elections, what we have are unnecessarily defensive strokes, dropped catches, and quite a few no balls and wides. Moreover, the budget reflects yet another complete disregard for the genuine concerns, hopes, and aspirations of our people who have given a fresh mandate to this government. It must be said that it's not we in the opposition that the government has failed by offering these terms of disappointment. Rather, it's the mandate of the people of India that the government has chosen to squander at the beginning of its tenure. As Mirza Ghalib famously observed, "Bujh jate hain ye kabhi tel ki kami se bhi, har baar kusur hawa ke jhonkon ka nahi hota." This is what has happened to our country. Kusur kisi aur ka nahi hai, aapki sarkar ki tel ki kami ke hain. Now, there were some remarkable aspects to this budget, but these, Mr. Chairman, came from what was not said in the budget speech rather than what was. This is perhaps the first budget in the history of the country where allocations, the engine of the document, were not mentioned. For over 2 hours, we waited for announcements of substance, but had to make do with an hour-long recitation of the so-called achievements of the first term and grandiose promises of fluff for the coming decade. When the people of India wanted concrete answers to the problems of today, we had to go and look into the documents afterwards. I must say we were left with a sort of Trishanku budget, neither here nor there. And at its heart, this kind of modest incrementalism wedded to some lofty ideals for a grand future. But sadly, no indication of a comprehensive and robust strategy or roadmap to get to that lofty vision. And from the Aam Aadmi's perspective, just a series of missed opportunities and uninspired reiterations of existing ideas. To start with, the macroeconomic situation of our country's economy was not even considered worth a mention in the budget speech. Can't blame them. The mess they've made doesn't really make for a pretty picture worth mentioning after all. There was strikingly no mention of the country's GDP growth rate. In fact, the word GDP was only mentioned once, and that was with regard to the external debt to GDP ratio. And the principal contributors to GDP, investment levels, manufacturing, consumption, and even the government's dubious fiscal deficit target was only mentioned amusingly after the official speech concluded as an afterthought. But since the government has intentionally failed to provide a fuller picture, let me begin by doing their job for them. Respected Chairman, the economic survey was presented last Thursday on Budget Eve, makes a rather optimistic projection of 7% GDP growth in the upcoming fiscal year. In fact, it goes on to mention that during the last quarter of the fiscal year, the growth rate will even pick up to 7.5 or 7.6%. And it will be a step towards hitting this 8% growth rate, which is, of course, integral to achieving the PM's target of a $5 trillion economy by the year 2024-25. I don't know where they're getting their figures from. Last time there was a concern they were getting their economics from a yoga teacher. But certainly here, there is a real credibility issue with any of these numbers. As the government's own last chief economic advisor has pointed out, our current growth rates could in reality be as much as 2.5 points lower than what is being projected.